The Silent Terror, the emergency session of the Galactic War Council, had never been called with such urgency. Admiral Kethvar's scaled hands trembled as he activated the holographic display in the center of the crystalline chamber aboard Nexus Prime. Around the circular table sat representatives from 12 different species, each bearing the haunted expressions of beings who had witnessed something beyond their understanding. Fellow commanders, Kethvar's voice carried the weight of defeat, despite his imposing 2-meter frame. His reptilian features, evolved for intimidation on his homeworld of Saras Major, now showed nothing but exhaustion. We gather today not to discuss victory, but survival. The human threat has evolved beyond our worst projections. General Morthak, whose chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lighting, clicked his mandibles nervously. As a member of the hive species, he was accustomed to coordinating thousands of units simultaneously through neural links. But, against humans, his greatest advantage had become meaningless. Admiral, with respect, we are not facing an army. We are facing ghosts. The holographic display flickered to life, showing casualty reports from 17 different star systems. The numbers were staggering, but what made them terrifying was their precision. Command officers eliminated with surgical accuracy. Supply depots destroyed by single shots to critical systems. Elite strike teams neutralized before they could even identify their attacker. Dr. Zendi, whose energy form pulsed with anxiety, projected her thoughts directly into the chamber. As a being of pure consciousness from the Luminary Collective, she had studied the psychology of warfare across countless species. What we are witnessing defies all conventional understanding of combat psychology. These humans do not fight with rage or desperation. They fight with something far more disturbing. "Patience," whispered Commander Veltar of the aquatic depths. His gills fluttered with distress as he spoke. They fight with infinite patience. The memory was fresh in every being's mind. The siege of Kepler Station had lasted 18 standard hours. Not because of fierce resistance or technological barriers. 18 hours because one human with a primitive kinetic weapon had held an entire battalion at bay. One human who had waited, motionless, for the perfect moments to strike. Kethvar gestured to the display, which now showed thermal imaging from that fateful battle. "Observe the pattern. While our forces moved with purpose and urgency, this human remained completely still for 7 hours and 43 minutes. 7 hours. Not moving, barely breathing, just watching." The assembled commanders studied the footage with growing unease. They could see their own troops' heat signatures moving in coordinated patterns, following centuries of established military doctrine. But the human signature was different. It pulsed so slowly, so methodically, that several scanning systems had initially classified it as background radiation. General Morthak's compound eyes reflected the display's glow as he spoke. "In hive warfare, we achieve victory through overwhelming coordination. 10,000 units moving as one mind. But this human turned our strength against us. Every coordinated movement became predictable. Every formation became a target opportunity." The door to the chamber hissed open, and 2 guards escorted a human female into the room. Captain Elena Martinez walked with quiet confidence despite her restraints. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and her clothing was unremarkable. Military fatigues. She appeared utterly ordinary, which somehow made her presence more unsettling. "Ah, our guest arrives," Kethvar said, his voice carrying forced formality. "Captain Martinez, you have been brought here not for interrogation, but for understanding. We wish to comprehend how your species has developed such effective methods of warfare." Elena's dark eyes surveyed the assembled aliens with calm assessment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and measured. "You want to understand sniping, but you're asking the wrong question." Dr. Zendi's energy form brightened with curiosity. What should we be asking? You should be asking why you're all afraid. To stand near windows, the silence that followed was profound. Each alien commander unconsciously shifted away from the chamber's viewing ports, confirming the human's observation. Elena continued, her tone remaining conversational. Sniping isn't about marksmanship. Any species can learn to aim accurately. It's about becoming part of the environment. It's about understanding that warfare isn't always about fighting. Sometimes it's about waiting. Commander Veltar's gills fluttered rapidly. But how do you maintain focus for such extended periods? Our studies show that most species experience attention degradation after 2 standard hours of stationary observation. Because you're thinking like prey, Elena replied simply. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't run faster than our prey. We didn't overpower it. We followed it until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to think in terms of hours, days, even weeks to achieve our objective. The concept was alien to every being in the room. The Saurians achieved dominance through immediate physical superiority, the hive species through instantaneous coordination, the luminary through pure intellectual processing speed. But humans had weaponized time itself. General Morthak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. This explains the psychological impact. Our soldiers expect engagement within predictable time frames. When nothing happens, they assume safety. Then death comes from nowhere? Exactly, Elena nodded. A sniper doesn't just eliminate targets. A sniper eliminates the feeling of safety. Once your troops know there might be a human with a rifle somewhere in the area, they can't move normally. They can't think normally. They can't function normally. Kethvar leaned forward, his predatory instincts engaged despite himself. But surely there are countermeasures, technology that can detect these hidden positions. Elena's smile was subtle but unmistakable. You're still thinking like prey. You assume we stay in one position. A good sniper takes the shot and moves immediately. By the time your sensors detect the muzzle flash, we're already relocating to the next position. You're not hunting a stationary target. You're hunting someone who knows you're hunting them. Shocked, revelation sent waves of unease through the chamber. Every species represented had developed military doctrine based on superior technology, overwhelming force, or tactical superiority. But humans had developed something more fundamental: the ability to make warfare personal. Dr. Zendi's energy form pulsed with realization. The fear factor multiplies exponentially. One sniper doesn't just threaten immediate targets. The knowledge of their presence affects entire military operations. Command structures collapse, Elena confirmed. Officers become afraid to make decisions that require exposure. Supply lines reroute to avoid potential overwatch positions. Entire battalions alter their strategies based on the possibility that someone might be watching. The display shifted to show strategic analyses from recent conflicts. Red zones marked areas where human snipers were suspected to operate. The pattern was clear. Alien forces had unconsciously created massive tactical disadvantages for themselves, all based on the potential presence of a single human with a rifle. Commander Veltar's voice was barely above a whisper. You have turned our own military intelligence against us. Every report of sniper activity forces us to assume worst-case scenarios. War is psychology, Elena said. Everything else is just tools. You can have the best weapons, the fastest ships, the most advanced technology, but if your enemy can make you afraid to use them effectively, none of it matters. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The assembled commanders realized they weren't just facing a military threat. They were facing a species that had evolved to weaponize fear itself. Humans didn't just fight battles. They infected their enemy's ability to think clearly about warfare. Kethvar's scales rippled with suppressed emotion. How many of your snipers does humanity deploy? Elena's expression remained neutral. That's classified information. Estimate, General Morthak pressed. Elena appeared to consider the request. Let me put it this way. How many do you think we need? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Each commander began calculating their own military's exposure to sniper threats, command centers, supply depots, communication arrays, troop movements. The list seemed endless. One sniper can observe and potentially engage targets across several square kilometers, Dr. Zendi observed, her energy form dimming with the implications. The threat multiplication factor is enormous. Now you're beginning to understand, Elena said quietly. It's not about how many snipers we have. It's about how many you think we might have, and humans are very, very patient. The hunter's mind, the chamber's lighting dimmed as Elena's words settled over the assembled commanders like a shroud. Admiral Kethvar activated a new section of the holographic display, showing training footage from Earth's military academies. The images were grainy, clearly obtained through intelligence operations, but they revealed something that chilled every alien observer to their core. We have studied your training methods, Kethvar said, his voice struggling to maintain authority. Show us this footage, Dr. Zendi. Human trainees lay motionless in various terrains for what the timestamp indicated were days. Some were buried in snow, others concealed in desert sand, still others hidden in dense vegetation. They remained so still that even advanced alien sensors had difficulty distinguishing them from their surroundings. 47 hours, General. Morthak observed, his compound eyes reflecting disbelief. This human remained in position for 47 hours without significant movement. Elena watched the footage with professional interest. That's actually not exceptional. The record in my unit was 96 hours. Marine named Jackson. He was tracking a high-value target who had unpredictable movement patterns. The concept was beyond alien comprehension. The Saurian military doctrine emphasized swift, decisive action. The hive species coordinated attacks that lasted minutes, not days. The Luminari processed tactical situations in microseconds. But humans had learned to think in geological timescales when necessary. What happens in the mind during such extended periods? Dr. Zendi asked, her energy form pulsing with scientific curiosity. Our research indicates that prolonged isolation and immobility should result in psychological deterioration. Elena's expression grew thoughtful. It's meditative, actually. You learn to slow down your thinking to match your environment. Your heartbeat synchronizes with natural rhythms. You become part of the landscape. Commander Veltar's gills fluttered with anxiety. But how do you maintain lethal readiness while in such a state? Because that's what we evolved to do, Elena replied. Before we developed agriculture, humans spent thousands of years as persistence hunters. We would track a single animal across vast distances, sometimes for days, waiting for the perfect moment when exhaustion made it vulnerable. The display shifted to show battlefield recordings from the war's early days. Alien commanders watched their own forces moving in textbook formations, following proven tactical doctrines. Then, with horrifying precision, key personnel began falling to shots that seemed to come from impossible distances. Observe the targeting selection, Elena commented as the footage played. Notice that the first casualties aren't the largest. Threats, they're the communication specialists, then the medics, then the officers who coordinate responses to communication breakdowns. General Morthak's mandibles clicked rapidly as understanding dawned. You deliberately create cascading system failures. Each elimination is calculated to maximize organizational disruption. A sniper thinks in systems, Elena confirmed. We don't just see individual targets. We see the web of relationships that holds a military unit together. Remove the right connections, and the entire structure collapses. The footage showed exactly that happening. As communications broke down and medical support vanished, alien forces began making increasingly desperate decisions. Units broke formation. Officers exposed themselves trying to re-establish control, and coordination dissolved into chaos. The psychological pressure intensifies with each elimination, Dr. Zendi observed. The remaining personnel know they are being systematically targeted, but they cannot identify the threat source. Elena nodded. That's when human patience becomes a weapon. While your forces are panicking and making mistakes, we're still thinking clearly, still calculating, still waiting for the next optimal shot. Kethavar manipulated the display to show tactical analyses from multiple engagements. The pattern was consistent across different battlefields and against various species. Human snipers didn't just kill efficiently, they killed intelligently, creating maximum disruption with minimum exposure. Your species approaches warfare like chess masters, Commander Veltar said, his voice carrying grudging respect. You think multiple moves ahead. Chess is actually a poor analogy, Elena corrected. Chess has rules. Chess has turn sequences. Chess ends when someone wins. Sniping is more like ecological management. The phrase sent ripples of unease through the chamber. The aliens exchanged glances, recognizing the implications of viewing warfare as environmental control rather than direct confrontation. Elena continued, her voice taking on an educational tone. In any military engagement, there are ecosystems of interdependence, supply chains, command hierarchies, communication networks, medical support, morale structures. A sniper doesn't attack the ecosystem directly. We introduce small changes that cause the entire system to reshape itself disadvantageously. Like introducing a predator into a balanced environment, Dr. Zendi realized, her energy form brightening with horrible comprehension. Exactly. The presence of a predator changes every other species' behavior. They become more cautious, less efficient, more likely to make survival mistakes. Eventually, the entire ecosystem revolves around predator avoidance rather than optimal function. The display now showed real-time footage from recent engagements. Alien forces moved with obvious terror, checking every sightline, avoiding open areas, clustering together for psychological comfort. Their military effectiveness had degraded by an estimated 60%, and in many cases, no shots had even been fired. General Morthak's voice carried the weight of defeat. You have weaponized our own survival instincts against us. Elena's expression remained neutral, but there was something almost pitying in her eyes. You evolved as different types of survivors. Your species developed overwhelming force, hive coordination, energy manipulation, aquatic advantages. But humans evolved as the thing that waits in the dark. The silence stretched as each commander contemplated their species' evolutionary path. They had reached the stars through different forms of excellence, but none had developed the particular combination of patience, adaptability, and systematic thinking that characterized human warfare. The range capabilities are equally disturbing, Kethavar said, calling up ballistic analyses. Confirmed kills at distances exceeding 2 kilometers in battlefield conditions. That's not even exceptional, Elena said quietly. Earth's record is over 3.5 kilometers, and that was with equipment that's now considered obsolete. Commander Veltar's gills nearly stopped functioning. 3.5 kilometers? That's beyond visual range for most species. Humans developed persistence hunting on plains where prey could be tracked visually for enormous distances, Elena explained. Our vision evolved to distinguish small movements across vast spaces. What seems impossible to you is natural to us. The tactical implications were staggering. Human snipers could potentially engage targets from positions that were entirely outside conventional defensive perimeters. Every safe zone, every secure facility, every protected area was suddenly questionable. Dr. Zendi's energy form pulsed with growing alarm. The strategic ramifications extend far beyond individual engagements. If human snipers can operate effectively at such ranges, traditional military planning becomes obsolete. Now you understand why your war councils keep failing, Elena said. You're planning for conventional warfare against an unconventional enemy. Every doctrine you've developed assumes that threats will announce themselves within predictable parameters. The display shifted to show intercepted communications from various alien military hierarchies. The content revealed a consistent pattern of psychological breakdown, officers requesting transfers away from human conflict zones, supply personnel refusing to service forward positions, intelligence analysts reporting nightmares about unseen watchers. The fear has become self-propagating, General Morthak observed, his voice barely above a whisper. Personnel who have never encountered human snipers are still affected by the knowledge of their existence. Elena nodded gravely. Fear is more contagious than any biological weapon. Once your troops believe that death can come from anywhere, at any time, their effectiveness degrades even in situations where no actual threat exists. The assembled commanders sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the true scope of the threat they faced. It wasn't just about superior marksmanship or advanced tactics. Humans had managed to export their evolutionary advantages across the galaxy, turning every battlefield into an environment where patience and systematic thinking provided overwhelming advantages. Kethvar's voice carried the weight of inevitable conclusion. What would it take for humanity to cease sniper operations? Elena's smile was sad and knowing. You're still thinking like prey. Asking a persistence hunter to stop hunting is like asking water to stop being wet. It's not something we do, it's something we are. The War Council session ended with an unprecedented decision. For the first time in galactic history, a coalition of 12 species formally requested a ceasefire, not because they lacked the power to continue fighting, but because they had finally encountered something that their power couldn't address. As Eleanor was escorted from the chamber, her final words echoed in the minds of every commander present. Remember, somewhere out there, someone is always watching, someone is always waiting, someone is always calculating whether you're worth the shot. The galaxy had learned to fear human snipers not because they were invincible, but because they represented something far more terrifying, the infinite patience of evolution's most successful predator, armed with precision technology. And let loose among the stars,